Alrighty, well, I decided since I'm not going to be around here for a little while, I'm going to go ahead and make a bunch more equipment videos, or equipment story videos, and then while I'm down there at school I could put one up every once in a while to kind of keep things rolling. But the topic of this particular video, which will be going up before any of the rest of them, is going to be the tractor that doesn't really get featured that many, or in many of my videos. I think it's only actually ever been in two. One cleaning the old barn out, and one spreading fertilizer a couple of years ago. And that will be my dad's 77. It's a 1951 wide front gas. And the story of the tractor pretty much goes like this. Back when my dad was still working for my grandfather, who had a basically a heating and air conditioning business, and he did some remodeling, and basically just a small general contractor, I guess would be the best way to put it. But they were working at a farm over in Three Oaks, which is the next town over from here, about 6 miles, redoing or working on the house a little bit, because the couple that lived there, the old man had passed away, and they were getting ready to sell the farm. It was an old dairy farm over there, and Dad and Granddad were over there working, and this was I want to say it was even before Dad and Mom got married. They were dating, but I don't think they got married yet, so it must have been around 88, because they got married in 89, so it was either 88 or 89. They were over there working on that house, and while Dad and Granddad were working on that, a couple of the kids and some that were of the family and a bunch of people were out cleaning the barns out, dragging stuff out in the yard to or they were going to have not going to have an auction, they were just going to sell everything, but they're getting everything dragged out in the yard to basically have a garage sale type thing. And the farm had this tractor, a 1600 diesel, narrow front, the 74H corn picker that I ended up with, which I did in another one of in the video, our equipment part 2, I think it was, with all the implements. I kind of told the story of that picker, but they had this tractor at 1600 diesel, that picker, and a Ford, I can't remember if Dad said it was an NNA or Golden Jubilee, and that was basically the equipment they had on the farm, or that was left on the farm. And they had the 1600 out, and it was running, and Dad had to go out to their service truck to get some tools, and about the time he walked out to the truck, he saw him dragging this thing out of the barn. And at that point, it didn't have the front side curtains on it. And he said that they were dragging it all over the yard trying to get it to, actually, I said back up just a little bit. They first pulled it out of the barn, and they hit the starter button, and it didn't start. But Dad said when he was watching it, he saw the fan blades move just a little bit. So he said he knew it wasn't locked up. And after they couldn't get it to start, they hooked onto it at 1600 and proceeded to drag it around the yard, popping the clutch, trying to get it to start, and it wouldn't roll over. And the thing about these old starters is, if the engine doesn't start to kick the Bendix out, the Bendix will stay engaged in the ring gear and it'll basically hang the starter up. So all they were accomplishing by dragging the tractor around was they were locking the engine up on the starter. So when basically Dad watched them dragging it around the yard, praying to God that they wouldn't break the bell housing or anything stupid. And they got done with it, and they just drug it out in the in one of the rows of stuff they were selling and parked it. And Dad and Granddad got done working on the house for the day, and Dad walked out there to talk to one of the boys, and he asked him about this tractor because at the time he was remodeling our house and he needed a tractor to help with that, and he wanted a tractor for pulling the log splitter and stuff around when they were cutting firewood, and basically just odds and ends. And at that point he didn't really have any preference. He just saw this thing and thought it looked cool, basically. And so he went up and talked to the guy about it, and he said, well, I'm kind of interested in that tractor. How much do you think you'd take for it? And the guy said, well, you know it's locked up, right? And Dad said, well, yeah, something like that. And the guy says, well, you give me $900 for it? Dad said, yeah, but he said, the one thing is, for $900, I get anything I find around here that goes with that tractor. And the guy agreed to it. So Dad went and looked through the barn. He was kicking around in the chaff, and he found the side curtains for it, and he found the set of 2-row pipe cultivators for it. Found the belt pulley for it, and got all that, laid it out next to the tractor. Came home, and the next day he and my uncle went over there, and he had a fresh battery with him. He dropped a fresh battery in it, pulled the starter off of it, shook it, the Bendix went clunk, stuck the starter back in it, got up on the tractor, hit the button. He said it rolled over about twice and was sitting there running. And he said at this point he had already given the guy the money, and he did it that way on purpose. And so it's sitting there popping away in the yard, and the guy that sold it to him just sitting there shaking his head back and forth. And naturally he was probably just a little irked, but deal's a deal. So, and my uncle was over there. He bought an old junk IH hay baler and a couple hay racks and a bunch of other junk stuff. So they hooked all that stuff together in a train behind this thing, and Dad actually drove it home. And he said the whole time he was driving it home, it was blowing carbon out of the stack and everything. He said he's covered in welts all over from the engine cleaning out, but he said by the time he got it back here, it was running pretty good. He said the only thing he wishes he'd have done is the first thing he should have done when he got it home was pulled the head off and had the valves ground, because after a few months of having it and running it, he did burn a valve, and he ended up having to pull the head anyway and do the valves in it. But since that time, when he first got it, he put his own set of hydraulics on it that ran off of the crankshaft, because the very first thing he did to it was he built this 3-point, which hopefully it's not too dark for you to see. Too much junk in here. So Dad built that 3-point. He kind of copied. He had seen pictures of Oliver 3-points, and he looked at a couple tractors, and he tried to copy it the best he could. And so he built that, and then before it had the Oliver hydraulics on it, when he got it, it just had the trip lift. So he put his own hydraulic pump on it that ran off of the crankshaft. And then when he bought our Super 77 diesel, that I need to get going one of these days, he took the hydraulic unit off of that, since it wasn't going to run for any time soon. And so now this has the hydraulic unit off of that Super 77. And then that's basically the extent of what has been done to it. It's not factory, or it's not original paint. It has been repainted, but it was repainted a long time ago. And whoever did it did a good job. They even went, trying to remember if it was 49. I think it was 49, because that's what my 66 is. 49 was the last year where they ran the yellow stripe all the way down. And then in I think it was either 50 or 51, but I'm pretty sure it's 50. They got rid of the boss that was cast into the frame, and the yellow stripe ended right underneath the grill. So they did that right. Decals are in the right spot. So yeah, It's got a 2-inch straight pipe on it. I think it's 2-inch. Yeah. And really all she gets used for anymore is brush chopping. Mainly because it really needs an engine overhaul. The rear main seal in it, I'm thinking is non-existent anymore because you can run all day on a quart of oil. It doesn't burn it because it doesn't blue smoke one bit, but it leaks it out the rear main really bad. I actually honestly can't believe the clutch still works. But she's just tired. Motor needs torn down, piston sleeves, head needs redone. And we've actually got the parts to do it, and one of these days it's going to happen. But Dad was talking to Brad Maybaugh. Shoot, this was probably at least 10 years ago now, because it was even before I started farming, when Dad originally thought he wanted to get the motor redone. And this, he's talking to Brad Maybaugh, and they basically came up with the combination of parts, and it's going to get a 770 head, 770 manifolds, carburetor, I think it's 3 7/8 pistons. I can't remember what all parts get dumped into that block, but basically it's going to go from 32 horse and a stock 77 to turning about 70 horse. And with all the parts in it, it will still be able to be a farm tractor at 70 horse. It's not going to be turning a whole lot faster. It's basically just going to be a 77 that breathed really good and got really big pistons in it. And so not screwing with the governor, stock RPM, all that stuff. And basically where it's going to come from is they got to take the 770 head and manifold to get imported and polished, and I can't remember now, it's been too long to give you the whole rundown of the list, but that's basically what's going to happen to that old girl, and then she'll probably start getting used again on a regular basis. So, got new Firestone tires all the way around. That's basically, this tractor right here is basically what I learned to drive on. Well, shoot, we got pictures of when I was probably less than a year old. The Dad drive me around in the yard with me, sitting on his lap. And then this was the first tractor I ever drove down the road by myself. Yeah, basically that's how I learned to drive, period, and how to run a tractor is on that one right there. And of everything we've got, I'm pretty sure that tractor right there is probably still my favorite, because, and it's not really something that I can describe, but there's just something about sitting in that tractor, the stance and the way it feels when you're driving it. You just know you're sitting on a hunk of iron, and I can't really describe the feeling you get when you're running a 77. But I just really, really, really like that tractor. And like I say, of everything we've got, this one is still probably my favorite. So that's basically the story of this one. And I'm sure Dad could probably tell it better, and there's probably more I'm missing, but that's the story that's the story of the 77 that I know and am able to tell. So I guess that does it for this one, and we will catch you guys on the next one.